There's another guy that everybody wanted to see compete in MMA, and that's Karelin. Did you ever get a chance to see Karelin compete?
Yeah, man. You know what? These guys they were so scared of him that when he would pick them up for the reverse gut wrench, they would pin themselves. They'd roll over and pin themselves.
Yeah.
It was like I went to the World Championships one year, and this guy's in the finals with Karelin, and Karelin goes to lift him up, and the guy turns over and pins himself. I'm like, why'd you do that? Like, you wrestled Karelin, at least, try to beat him.
They were worried about getting smashed.
Yeah, they didn't want to get hurt. Yeah.
And hit you with the world. Yeah. He would basically, there's a photo that we have in the gym out here that I put up just to remind myself of what a pussy I am. It's Karelin. Show that photo. It's this black and white photo of Karelin where he's about to take this guy. That photo right there. Look at that fucking photo. Tell me that's not, that dude was 300 fucking pounds and moved like a panther.
It's crazy that he got beat his last match.
Yeah, well, he got beat by a new rule, right?
Technicality.
Yeah, the technicality was when you broke the grip, it counted as 1 point.
Yeah.
And that was really at the end of his career. But Rulon Gardner was also a tank, too.
He was. And Rulon went on to fight, and he did fairly good.
He did well in Pride.
Fights, yeah. But I just had Rulon on my podcast, and he said that, wrestling Karelin, at that point in his career, he knew that Karelin wasn't in the best form of shape.
He wasn't the same.
Yeah, but he was still Karelin.
He was still Karelin.
Doesn't matter. He's the baddest dude on the planet.
He was so
and for Rulon to stay close with him and then end up beating him on a technicality, that's still pretty impressive.
Very impressive. Yeah. If you watched Karelin training, though, what was so fantastic about Karelin was his mobility.
Yeah.
Even though he was this enormous guy, his mobility was sensational. See if you can find some of that footage of Karelin training.
Good athlete.
Incredible athlete. For a giant guy, he really emphasized his movement. And, the Soviet training, what they were doing with those guys back then was so technical.
Well, the rumor about him, right? They called him the experiment.
Yeah. Well, his parents were, small. They were, my size. And then, all of a sudden they have this kid that just looks like some science project.
He does. He does look like an experiment.
It's like Ivan Drago. Was based off of, right?
Bro, he would have picked Ivan Drago up and spiked him to China. His feet would have been poking out of the fucking top of the earth. But if you watch his training, a lot of his training was box jumps and kettlebells and mobility. A lot of it was movement-based. He was very, very flexible. So you see that when you kind of fast forwarded through that, but what they showed before when he was on the mats there, look at that. Him wiggling around on the top of his shoulders.
Wow.
Look at that kind of agility.
That's called mobility.
Yeah, for a 300-pound guy. And this is at the end of his career too. But he was all about athleticism and, and also being fucking enormous and incredibly strong, but moved like a panther.
Now, why didn't he fight?
He had one kind of fake fight. I think he had one, in Japan. What was interesting about Japan had real fights mixed in with fake fights in the beginning. They eventually became all real fights.
That was Pride, right?
Yeah. So there was some fights that they had, and also in some other organizations, some smaller organizations. So is this Karelin? Yeah. So this was kind of like a fake fight. I think he gets tapped in here, and this is at the end. He wasn't wrestling anymore, and I think they just probably gave him a lot of money. I forget how he loses here, but it seemed suspicious.
You think he just threw it?
I think so. I don't know.
It doesn't really show the ending here.
I'll be honest with you. Watching him compete, I just didn't. I always thought that if he ever fought, he would just dominate.
I think he would have too. Yeah. In his prime, I don't think a human being would have been able to stop him.
No.
That was the end.
That was the end? Okay, so he didn't lose. I thought, when I think, maybe he fought more than once. I don't think it was a real MMA fight, though. Because it just didn't, I don't know. It was weird over there. Because Japan had such a history of pro wrestling that a lot of their early stars, you got to pee? A lot of their early stars in MMA were also stars in pro wrestling, like Takada. When Takada fought in the first UFC.
Nagata, yeah.
But he fought Hickson Gracie, and that was a real fight. And Hickson was quite a bit smaller than him, but Hickson was the master of jiu-jitsu back then. I mean, he was so advanced.
He was the man, huh?
He was the man.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was the guy that when Royce Gracie won the UFC, everyone said, listen, Royce is great, but his brother is literally 100 times better
That's
than
what I
him.
heard.
Yeah, and then you would see him roll. What Hickson would do famously is he would teach a seminar with world champions in the crowd, black belts, teach a seminar, explain to him certain principles that he used, and then at the end of the seminar, he'd roll with everybody. And he would roll with them one at a time. So these guys would wait, and then these black belts, world champions, like the top of the food chain, they would go in there and roll with Hickson, and Hickson would tap them all. And there's videos of it, of him just effortlessly tapping everybody.
Just rotating in and out, huh?
Rotating.
Yeah.
No breaks. Bring in the next guy, my friend.
Yeah.
And they would come in and he would tap them too. It's just his level of jiu-jitsu was so advanced. His dad was Elio Gracie. He started when he was a kid. And the thing that separated him from so many of those other guys was his physicality. Because Hickson, his knowledge was as good, better than anybody's, but his movement and his physicality, he was jacked.
Right,
You know, he was like one of the first jacked Gracies.